Good morning. I'm John Bitson, the Menard Family Director of the Sheila and Robert Challey Institute for Global Innovation and Growth. This morning, I'd like to introduce you to Ahmad Al Asady. Ahmad is an assistant professor of management at NDSU and a faculty scholar in the Challey Institute. Welcome, Ahmad.
Thank you very much, John. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here.
Thank you.
So, Ahmad, you do some very interesting research related to corruption, entrepreneurship, and institutions. What kinds of questions do you aim to tackle with your research?
So, the main question that I aim to tackle in my research is to, through understanding institutions, how are we able to lower the bar of success for entrepreneurs? So, entrepreneurs in all their forms, so small businesses, innovators, startups, they suffer from liabilities, and that are inherent to them being, so young, inherent to them having, not access to too many resources. And what the research that I try to do is that I try to aim to understand the institutional environment so that I may be able to empower them and provide better sort of solutions, rather than the solutions that are that the governments have right now in terms of providing the regulations that they have in terms of regulating the economy, for example, or regulating the markets. And so what I aim to do is I try to provide another sort of view in terms of institutions. And so when we're talking about institutions, we're talking about the rules and regulations that govern our interactions. And there are formal institutions, and then there are informal institutions. And formal institutions would comprise, for example, the government. Basically, like a university, for example, would be an institution, a formal institution. An informal institution would be an example like tipping. So where there aren't formal rules and regulations for it, but there are informal sort of that will govern individuals' interactions. So like in the United States, for example, there's tipping. In other countries, there is, for example, bartering or haggling, for example, where there isn't a rule for it, but individuals engage in it. And corruption is unfortunately in informal institutions that entrepreneurs must react to or conform to in order to, better their ventures in some environments.
Oh, yeah, excellent. So you're looking at the rules, essentially, the institutions, and the best type of institutions in order to facilitate entrepreneurship. Yes. Excellent. So what kinds of questions, can you talk a little bit about the importance of your research and the impacts that your research has on society?
Well, so right now, the main question that I'm tackling, I think with the greatest impact, is we're exploring the advent of digital technologies and their influence on the relationship between corruption and entrepreneurs' performance. And why digital technologies are so important right now is entrepreneurship is a socially constructed process. So where entrepreneurs through their interactions within their personal space, amongst their friends and families, that they're able to be alert and innovate. So, for example, Henry Ford, I believe it was 1911 or 1912 when he created the assembly line, the moving assembly line. So that was actually a tweak in innovation for manufacturing, and it allowed him to produce the Model T, I think, at 84 steps, which made actually greatly increased efficiency and allowed him to achieve economies of scale. So he came up with the idea by visiting the Chicago meat packing plants, and he saw a moving conveyor belt at a grain mill, and he basically took those two ideas together and applied them in his industry. And so it was socially constructed. So, for example, had the digital technologies existed around, when Henry Ford was there, he would not have had to visit those places. Perhaps he would have seen a video about how the meat is, for example, processed or packaged, or read an article online, for example, or contacted someone. So that's digital technologies will allow entrepreneurs sort of to it'll give the process more fluidity. We're hoping, and so instead of just only engaging with individuals around them, they'll be able to cross time and space, and hopefully that'll demonstrate to them that they wouldn't have to engage in sort of in other informal institutions around them. So, for example, like corruption, because they'll have access to information and things of that nature.
Right. So corruption could give some entrepreneurs potentially some kind of an inside track into entrepreneurial opportunities that are not available for people that are acting honestly. But if you get rid of the advantage of corruption through the digital technologies, that it can level the playing field and then eliminate, hopefully, corruption because it takes away the advantage. Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, you're absolutely correct. Yes, and it's actually we believe that the effect is actually more significant in environments where corruption is more rampant. Because corruption is so rampant, when you introduce digital technologies, the positive attitude that entrepreneurs would have developed because of being in those environments would actually diminish. And so they would not have to. There would be less of a need for them to engage in it.
Yeah, excellent. And so are there additional questions you'd like to tackle in your research in the future?
Well, future-wise, I'd like to look at the relationship sort of from a regional standpoint. Interestingly, when we're looking at the data from sort of the World Governance Indicators and from the World Bank, you'll see although there's a variance among countries, there's actually more of a variance among regions. Right, so for example, the Middle East and North Africa regionally ranks high in terms of corruption. However, they also rank high in terms of digital technologies. So they have over, I think, 127% smartphone penetration rate, which is actually amazing. However, like for example, in the North America region, we see that, for example, corruption is less rampant, and digital technologies are actually they're more available over there. And so we'd like to sort of explore the antecedents of such regional variances.
Well, excellent. I'm looking forward to seeing what you find out in the future. It's very important work, and thanks for sitting down with me today to talk about your work, and I'm really excited to see what happens.
Well,
thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.